Welcome. In this video, I want to show you how easy it is to exchange QuickBooks vendor information with your FileMaker Pro vendor information. Clicking on vendors, one of the first things that we want to talk about is how do we get your QuickBooks vendors down into FileMaker. We want to do that because we want to use FileMaker Pro as the front end for your QuickBooks vendors. We don't want people making edits in QuickBooks to your QuickBooks vendors and also in FileMaker and then being confused as to which one is the most recent edit. So we want to pull down all of the QuickBooks vendors from QuickBooks into FileMaker. So now we do that by clicking on the Pull All QB Vendors, and we can see we've pulled them all down. And on the Bank of any city, you might notice that there's an Add button. And what this is, this nice feature is that if the list ID isn't seen over in our live FileMaker vendor file, then it makes the assumption that this record that was just pulled from QuickBooks needs to be added. Whenever you're doing anything like this, just make sure that you don't already have that record in your vendor table. So I'm going to click Add and pull that in on a one-off basis. But I can also, and you'll notice that the Add button disappeared when I did that, but I can also pull all of the vendors at one time by clicking the Add All to FileMaker button. And what that's going to do is grab all of the vendors from this separate QB vendor file and import them into the live FileMaker vendor file. It's going to do what we call a matching import. It's going to match against this list ID so that any records it finds over here with the same list ID as it's importing, it's going to overwrite the records with the QuickBooks information and not add duplicate or extra records. Now, the other thing that we need to talk about is what we do individually with each vendor record. This Send to QuickBooks button right here works as a add or a modify. So as we create a record in FileMaker, it's not going to have any of this information. This is information that's brought back when we do a sync to QuickBooks. So if I were to add a new record and have a blank list ID and then click Send to QuickBooks, it's going to create a brand new vendor record. However, if I have already sent it to QuickBooks and I have a list ID and I click this button, then it's going to modify the QuickBooks record with whatever I have on this record. So I'll go ahead and do that. And what you should do is you should get back a 0 and a success and a success. Now, if someone edits the record, does edit the record in QuickBooks, so I'm going to open this up and show you. Now I've opened up that vendor, Bank of any city, and I'm going to change the phone number. So all I'm going to do is just change the phone number. That's going to change the QuickBooks edit sequence number, which is different from the unique identifier. This is a number that gets updated every time someone makes a change to a record in QuickBooks. Well, FileMaker and the Productive Computing FMBooks connector cannot talk to one another if those numbers aren't in sync. So now if I try to push, it's going to give me an error and tell me that the edit sequence number is out of date. So what I need to do is just hit refresh edit sequence number. That's going to make a link via the list ID and pull in the most recent sequence number and allow me then to continue to push information from QuickBooks or retrieve it. The other option that you have is using the FileMaker vendor ID. That's a sequential number that gets created every time you add a vendor. We can use that as the account number in the vendor file in QuickBooks if we want to. Well, let's open up that record again and let's see what's being used. If we go to the payment settings, we can see that it's using 00333 as the account number. Let's go back to FileMaker and we can see 00333 is the one that FileMaker is assigned to. Now, if we don't want to use that number and we want to use the QuickBooks number, we can uncheck this and then we can push back to QuickBooks and it should use this number, which is the QuickBooks account number, instead of the 333. So we'll click OK. Now we're going to click this button and open it up and go back to payment settings and we can see it's the 332. So it's just an option whether or not you want to use an account number that's generated in FileMaker and keep the two in sync, or you may want to have a different number that QuickBooks that you've entered through QuickBooks versus the one that FileMaker assigns just an option for you there. The Get From QuickBooks will let you pull that information down should you ever need to and update the FileMaker record from the QuickBooks record. And that's really all there is to exchanging information between your QuickBooks vendor information and your FileMaker vendor information. Thanks for watching.